Do they have any effects on the environment?
Well, the genetic modified organisms themselves maybe don't have any effect on the environment, other than if you take genetically modified corn, and corn is a wind pollinated crop, and it's difficult for me to see how a wind pollinated crop wouldn't carry the pollen up into the atmosphere and deposit it somewhere else. I think that the pollen moves a long way, so that the downside of having a genetic modified gene in a open pollinated line of corn is that leaves the owner of that corn open to lawsuits from the companies that own the genetically modified varieties. And it also means that you've got genetically modified corn in someone else's corn which shouldn't be there. The genetic modification may also move during reduction division or meiosis, which creates gametes in plants. There's an opportunity for genes to cross over and move around on the chromosome. If they move around on the chromosome, does that alter their expression in the plant? And my own opinion is that genetic modification of plants is an ongoing experiment, and maybe there should be more known about the environmental effects of genetically modified organisms before they were released. The other thing also is that if a trait such as herbicide resistance is put into a large number of crops, and that the herbicide resistance that's out there now is Roundup resistance. Roundup is, and was prior to being used on genetically modified corn, it was the world's #1 used herbicide, and now it's by way more, or it's the gap between it and its nearest rival has increased as a result of genetic modification of soybeans and corn to create Roundup resistant varieties. Pouring Roundup onto a soil year in and year out is really putting pressure on that soil. We're going to see a sustainable soil should have a diverse population of microbes, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, all very small creatures. Those very small creatures they need only a small amount of Roundup, maybe nanograms or picograms, in order for the metabolism of those organisms to be affected by Roundup. It may not kill them, it may affect the metabolism. So in terms of ecology, drenching a field with Roundup over and over again could be seen as a major ecological disturbance, the results of which we have no idea about. So again, it's a part of, it seems to be a part of an ongoing genetic experiment that involves the major food crops of humans today, which one can argue that might not be the best thing to do.
What are some advantages of GMOs?
Well, depending on what the trait is, if the trait is insect resistance, which has been put into corn, in the insect being the corn ear, or the corn earworm, or corn borer, which bores into the seed as it's developing, or into the cob as it's developing. So if you put something like that into corn, that means that if it's got its own ability to kill or repel insects, then you don't have to spray with something that's going to be toxic to not only the target organism but other insects as well. So there's perhaps an opportunity to reduce the use of synthetic pesticides. with that particular trait. That could be seen as an advantage. It could be seen as an advantage from the farmer's point of view, that he doesn't have to spend his money on expensive chemicals, nor does he have to take the time to apply them to his field. And it could be seen as good from the consumer's point of view, in that the food will contain no residues of insecticides that could ultimately pollute one's body.
What are some disadvantages to GMOs as well?
Well, I think one of the what I see as a disadvantage would be that over the last, it's only during the last 10 to 20 years that genetically modified organisms have been widely used in agriculture, maybe over the last 10 to 15. But what that has done, it has really moved the best varieties of some of the major commodity crops, corn, soybeans, cotton, potatoes, Irish potatoes, not sweet potatoes, into the hands of companies. Prior to genetically modification of organisms through genetic engineering, most of the best varieties of corn, soybeans, potatoes were developed by public institutions with public funding. And that system started with the land-grant university system in this country. Over the last 10 to 15 years, since genetically modified organisms can be patented, or the gene can be patented and therefore belongs to someone, companies have patented genes, and then they've taken those genes and inserted them into the best agricultural seeds, or the genetics, or the genomes of the best agricultural seeds, and thereby, since it contains their gene, they have claimed it as their property. So there's been a shift, if you like, of the genetic basis of major food crops from the public domain to the private domain. The public domain probably is the best place for it to be, because corporations do not make decisions based on the welfare of humanity. They make decisions based on profit. To have the food crops that sustain the majority of the world's population in the hands of companies that are working for profit seems to me to be a poor move, because profits and what's best for society as a whole are not necessarily the same.
So, are there other uses of GMOs than just agriculture?
Yes. Yes, people are modifying cells of other animals. People are probably looking at modifying cells of humans, even though that's not allowed, maybe in this country. In other countries it is. Once genes are identified and can be packaged and delivered to different organisms, it opens up a whole new horizon. And in some cases it may be well controlled, in other cases not.